Let's go. Soundtrack's a banger. God damn. God damn. Stream on YouTube? Yeah, I'm about to whip the YouTube stream right now. Give me a quick second. YouTube stream is up. Hey. Yo, Saki, thanks for the 39. Appreciate it, dude. Thank you. Are my alerts muted? I don't hear anything. But they're not muted. What? Oh, I don't have alerts on this scene. Wow, I didn't notice that. I don't have alerts on this scene. Crazy. I appreciate it though. Thank you. I'll replay when we're ready to start. Yo, look at the date. Today's date is pretty funny, no? Why are you looking at me like that? What's wrong with the date? Oh man. Just to me, Today's gonna be a great day. I got the Persona music, but you know today's gonna be a great day. You know today's gonna be a great day. When does it start? 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I got the Persona music bumping. You know today is gonna be a great day. Why is that letting me pull up the YouTube chat? Is my TikTok alive? Yes, sir. We're live on TikTok. I can't pull up my own YouTube stream though. Chat box. Okay. Today's gonna be a great day. Today is going to be a great day. Today is going to be a great day. be a great day. You manifesting it? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's gonna be a great day. Jump Force remake? Stop it, bro. Put the fries in the bag. Son. Bro said, Jump Force remake, put the fries in the bag. The Xbox gonna get ahead of Sony? I don't think so. It's gonna be very hard to top. I don't know. It's gonna be very hard. Let me pull up my predictions. Hold on. All right, so this is what I had, right? Actually, let me pull up the one with the crossouts. Okay, this is what I have. Anything crossed out already happened. Chances we see Cyclops here is not happening. I don't think so, no. Because, what? Rivals info's tomorrow, no? Well, I guess 2 days. Rumor has it's tomorrow, though. I don't know where that's coming from, though. But I heard some people are saying it's tomorrow. I'm like, oh, we're going back to Mondays for Rivals info? Not Tuesday? Final Fantasy, that's FF17. That's FF17. It's just an expedition thing in the background. It's funny. Yeah, FF happened. It's right here. FF7 Rebirth or Revolution or whatever it's called. Reunion, whatever the fuck the last part's called. Rev. Then I get some Persona today. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. We need some Persona. Oh, let me took. I took it off. Oh, what the fuck?
Introducing a new protagonist, Evie. It's early.
Oh, that's from Stellar Blade. What the fuck? Oh, let me tweet the stream out. That Blade game, we do need to see the Blade game. We really do. What I have Photoshop open? Oh, I was making a thumbnail for YouTube stream. Okay, so the plan for this stream is that I'm gonna watch this and stream and come back later. And by later, I mean obviously later today, not now, like not anytime soon, like a few hours. Get some more sleep. I need to get some more sleep. Screws loose. What time we got left? 18 minutes. Oh, whoops. 17 minutes. There you go. Stream has been tweeted. Today's gonna be a great day. Today's going to be a great day. If there isn't a Persona announcement, I'm gonna yo, imagine there's no Persona announcement after all that we've been through. Oh, I might actually snap. Might actually snap. All right, let's break this down. Okay, so Infamous 3, Tokon happened, Street Fighter 6 Year 4 happened, Stellar Blade 2 happened, GTA has not happened yet, Persona 4 Revival has not happened, New Gacha has not happened, Intergalactic or whatever the hell it's called has not happened. That's Naughty Dog's game. Rivals Cyclops has not happened. FF17 not happened. Zonkoi, same people that made the Black Man Wukong game, because they're making a Zonkoi game, has not happened. DMC, no mention at all. P6, no mention at all. Crazy Taxi, no mention at all. Blade, no mention at all. DOA, no mention at all. KH, no mention at all. RE5 or RE5, but it ended up being Resident Evil Veronica. I'll fucking count that. I don't care. This is the Souls like chicken game. It's winless, but whatever. Mega Man did not happen yet. So yeah, we'll see if Xbox can come in clutch and give me a bingo. That'd be pretty fire. That would be pretty fire. But yeah, the plan for this stream is that I'm gonna stream this now and I'm gonna end and come back later, like I said. So I'm not gonna continue streaming after this. Usually I do continue streaming after these, right? But it's not 5 p.m. What time is it? Like what, 1 or 12? Yeah, no. Hell no. Bitch, I'm out of here. Take my ass back to bed. Back to bed I go. I ain't catch up on sleep. It's 12:45. I don't stream this early. Unless it's update day. I don't stream this early. Or unless I'm doing like a 12-hour or something. Hell nah. I don't have a reason to stream this early, so I'm going to take my ass back to bed. But yeah. It's going to be a good show, hopefully. I saw something about FF7 Remake coming out and is that like the only game they got? I thought it was FF17. There's like 17 Final Fantasy games, but I ain't getting a remake after. Oh, no. Every Final Fantasy game is a standalone game. If there's a continuation of a game, it would say Final Fantasy like 10-2 or like FF7 Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. The one that you're about to look at right that just got announced is FF7 Part 3, which is what is it called? Revolution? I keep fucking forgetting the name. Because it's FF7 Remake and a Rebirth. Revelation? Oh, it's Revelation, not Revolution. Wow. So yeah. Yeah, FF7 is the most popular FF, so like, I mean, it has Cloud, Yuffie, Tifa, like, Sephiroth, like, Barret, like, it has so much popular characters. So, I mean, I'm not surprised. Is FF7 my favorite? Probably not. I think my favorite's probably 10 or 10, 15, or 16. I like how dark 16 was. Though I have not played Lightnings yet. What was that, 13? FF6 is pretty dark too. FF6 is pretty darn dark. Darn dark. FF9, I bought it. I tried playing it. I can't. I need that game to get remade. I don't know if I can beat that. I like old games, but that might be not even mentioning the Go Zach. That's crazy. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Son. Have they announced Persona yet? Son, you see this big counter on the screen, bro? And you said, have they announced Persona yet? I know you see this big ass timer on the screen. Nah, there's no excuses. I'm streaming in horizontal on TikTok as well this time around. I don't usually stream in horizontal on TikTok, so there's no excuses. I know you see this big timer on the damn screen. And you asked me that damn question. Lock in. Lock in. Yo, I want them to remake the Persona dancing games. I don't play those. But I guess they wouldn't have to remake it. But all of them have like the really old voice actors in. I don't know. They're pretty old and like they're not really accessible. They're not on Steam or anything. You just like, if you want to get those, you gotta like crack it. I don't even think you get that on PlayStation Store. Persona Kart game? Persona Kart is crazy. Persona Kart is crazy work. I would be curious to see if they have GTA 6 here. If Xbox secured that, that'd be pretty crazy. Over PlayStation's showcase or Summer Games Fest showcase, Xbox snagged it. That would have been crazy. Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, I highly doubt it. But imagine. I mean, they have to have some banger. Unless they like end with like, I mean, regardless, whatever they end with is gonna be a banger game. It'd have to be like some major like Persona 6 or some shit. Something a lot of people have been waiting for. They would have to end with a banger. GTA 6 not being shown until at least late June. Damn. I mean, whenever they start promo for GTA 6, they're gonna go full send. You're gonna see ads every fucking where. What's up, Ross? You're gonna see ads everywhere. You're gonna see ads every fucking where, bro. That's just gonna be crazy. I have this song on here twice. How? Yeah, I'm gonna run ads before this starts. Ads are running right now, actually. But before this starts, I'm gonna run ads. I think GTA 6 is gonna win Game of the Year. Yeah. Unless they like somehow fumble it like crazy, but I don't see them doing that. I mean, they have the blueprint and they know what works and what doesn't work. You remember when GTA 5 dropped? They didn't drop with Heist. Oh my god, bro, that shit was so annoying. It didn't drop with Heist. Like, Heist didn't drop with the game, so like you'd have to do like the ways to make money were so like annoying. You had to do money glitches and shit. You had to do money. Oh my god, rooftop rumble. Whew. Money glitches, car dupes, scraps, literally scraps to make money just to get that one car, that dream car, bro. Can't fumble a GTA game. Deadass can't. You'd be surprised. That's like saying Call of Duty can't fumble a Call of Duty. They have fumbled. They have removed features and added them way later into a different game. I think the dumbest shit I've ever seen Call of Duty do was the fact that to get attachments, you had to level up a different gun. Like, what do you mean if I want this silencer, I have to level up a different gun to a certain level to get the silencer for this other gun? It's like, what are you cooking, bro? I can't just use the same gun, just get all the attachments for it? No, they won't let you. It was so stupid, bro. Can't compare GTA to COD. Okay, fair enough, but like, you'll be surprised. Some game devs, they would take shit away, like for no reason at all. Just cool shit in the game, they would just take it away, lock it behind monetization, or just like it just won't be there for some reason. Just for no reason, it's just not there. Bro, look at multiverses, bro. Come on now. They had the literal blueprint on the beta. And then when the game, the beta was amazing, and then the game dropped, they slowed down the game. Ranked wasn't there. Training mode wasn't there. No, it wasn't there. If it was there, it was missing a shitload of features. Like, and they just fumbled. Like, bro, what? I'm telling you, you'd be surprised, bro. I've seen people have the blueprint just fuck it over. I mean, hey, bro. How does the game release with less features than it had in beta? Son, like multiverses was crazy, bro. Oh my god. Like, why did you slow down the game? And why is training mode not there? And why was ranked not there when it was in the open beta or whatever? Like, it just, like, multiverse is a prime example. And look at it now. It's not even a thing anymore. It's shut down. Delisted from the store, no? 2024. No longer available. Delisted. Straight up delisted. You can still play it if you have it. Can't play online though. Can't play online though. Can't play online though. Not at all. It's just crazy. Nah, I don't think Terra's here. No. Check. Nah, it's too early. I figured they weren't gonna be away. It's too early. It's too early. Yeah, none of them are awake. Are you editing right now? Probably. That one's a banger. Ooh, I'll play the Smash version of I'll Face Myself. probably my favorite version of the song. The Smash remix of this. So Smash Ultimate. Is it? Yeah. This song's a banger. It's the Smash version though. You gonna play Persona 4 Reload or Revival, whatever the fuck it's called? P4 Revival, Rewind, what? Yes, I am. I'm gonna put it on stream. Yeah, Smash has hella banger remixes. We need Smash? Hell yeah, we need to Smash. Hell yeah. And we're gonna get one, bro. All the people saying we're not gonna get one, you're tripping. With or without soccer, we're getting one. Need an Ocarina of Time remake? 4 minutes, 4 minutes. Okay, ads are about to be free. I'm gonna run ads. Oh, Sarah's actually here. You're actually awake. Huh. I'm not home. Gee, bro. Gee. How long is this one gonna be? I have no clue. Like an hour plus, 2? I don't know. I have no clue. At least an hour. Yo, hit that like button. Yeah, if y'all on YouTube, hit that like button. Yes, sir. Persona 4 Revival today, bro. Lock in. Lock in. Lock the fuck in, chat. Lock in. Lock the fuck in. Or my ad button is grayed out. I'm trying to run ads before this starts. Yikes. Roughly 2 hours, something like that. Whatever it is, it better be a banger. That's all I know, bro. It better be a banger. I'm trying to see some great games. Great games, phenomenal games. What are mute alerts? Multiverse failed because of once a lifetime opportunity, passion project became greedy corp. Bro, it's Warner Bros. I'm not surprised it went that way. This happens every single Warner Bros. Game I've played. Every single Warner Bros. Game I've played on this stream, and like how long have I been streaming now? Like 5 years, has been horribly optimized, buggy mess, shut down, or all of the above. It's like, God, dude. Oh my God. 100 gifted is a new Resident Evil. What the hell? What would that be? Oh, I can run ads. Okay, I'm gonna run ads real quick. I'm gonna run a quick 1 minute, 30 minute. I said 30 minute. 1 minute, 30 second ad before this starts. I said 30 minute. 10 gifted with your DMC 6. Yeah, all right. I said 30 minutes. Whoops. That'd be crazy. Bro, I can't stand playing Warner Bros. Games, bro. WB, I hate Warner Bros. Even though I love DC. I love DC more than I like Marvel, but like I can't anymore. They just fumble that shit. They just fumble it. I don't like, just can't, bro. Just expert fumblers. Yo, Mo, thanks for the gift, dude. I didn't get the ad. I mean, not everyone's gonna get an ad. Just chance. DC allies? Son. For the Arkham series, we are gonna play it. When I move, we're gonna play it. What the? Thank you. Whoa. Are they starting? What? That countdown? Y'all just skipped the countdown? Oh, okay. Oh, we're skipping the countdown. Here's to the next 25. Oh, this thing might be a banger. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Lock in. Lock in. Lock in. I don't know how they were going to top the PlayStation Showcase in the Summer Games Fest, but let's see it. Let's go. Mods, snooze ads as much as you can during this. You can. If you're on PC. If you're not, I got it. Don't worry. Ooh, what game do they start with though? Resident Evil was PlayStation start, no? I mean not PlayStation's Summer Games Fest start. Wolverine was PlayStation start.
This is the Coalition Emergency Broadcast
Coalition?
System. There are reports of multiple tremors causing minor damage across
Coalition Invincible? This is Fallout? Coalition of planets.
Stay sharp. Don't let them surround you.
There should be more guns in the trunk.
Is it Fallout?
Here.
Oh, it's Gears. Wait, but I thought this was gonna be after.
This isn't enough.
The D-Day?
We should still head to the police station. We're gonna have more
E-Day?
firefighting.
D-Day?
Right.
E-Day? Whatever it's called.
It's about 2
E-Date?
blocks up ahead.
Okay.
Oh, it looks good too, damn.
Shoot, move, watch for civilians.
Holy crap, I haven't seen Gears in so long.
Get
Oh,
inside
man.
now.
I haven't seen Gears. I don't even remember last time I saw Gears, bro.
Ground's opening.
It's kind of a weak start because this is a given. I mean, we knew this was gonna be here, and also, like, I mean, they said they're gonna immediately after this presentation they're gonna do a E-Day. So I don't know why this is at the start instead of something else or whatever. But I mean, I guess you can kind of say the same about Wolverine, though. You got more firepower? I guess. Damn. Game looks good.
See that? It was something big, like huge crab fingers picking up through the street.
Just the adrenaline, kid. We need to keep moving through the underpass.
Let's get moving.
Let me see what I can do.
I'm not Hispanic, so I'm not interested in Gears. What does that even mean?
These things are all over me.
More
What?
tremors.
Any gears out there? Anyone that can hear this?
What does that even mean? I don't. That acts like Gears? Is it? Is that? I mean, all the friends I like Gears are black. Like, if you just said, like, I don't know, like Dragon Ball, okay, I wouldn't be able to argue with that. Like, I don't know. But, like, I didn't know there was a correlation there.
Goddamn breach points.
This is a fact? Really? I'm Hispanic and I like Gears. I can defer that statement. Like, whatever. Just forget it. Just forget it. Just forget it. We change the topic. Let's just enjoy the fight.
All right. That gear said they're stuck in the KFC. Which way?
It's on the other side of those apartments.
Horrible joke, but whatever. Just forget it, bro.
Too slow. Oh, bugger! Come on, then.
Tara's not home. We can't help you, VC. You at the beach? You got beach money? I'm joking.
Where the hell did you?
Is there a beach that costs money?
We heard your distress.
Somehow, some way, shape, or form, you're there,
Saved
though.
by us. But we need to make ourselves scarce.
They just show Gears. This is Gears, yes.
Fuckers keep pouring in.
There's beaches that cost money? Shit. I didn't know that.
Right on schedule.
Rich beaches. Rich beach.
Yeah. Who are you?
Wait, you telling me you're at the beach with your girl, but you're sitting here watching this with us? Yeah, you're evil, bro. If you don't get off.
We're in the
Yo, damn fucking phone. He at the beach with the damn stream open instead of hanging with his girl, bro. If you don't log in. Predicts on DMC, that is not happening. You know damn well that's not happening. Fine, I'll do it though. I'll take the bait. I'll take the bait though. I give you 5 minutes on this predict. Go ahead and vote. It's not gonna happen. DMC is not gonna be here, but whatever. I'll take the bait.
Reload it.
Frag grenade. Damn.
Anyone see him?
Use a frag grenade.
Contact front.
There's no end to these freaks.
How long is this? This is actually pretty long, yeah. Just went over to Twitch to put 10K on. No, that's crazy. You hater. Bro slid to Twitch to it's just dumb.
On your right.
Damn.
Jams. Damn it.
Uh-oh. Damn. Getting cooked.
Tom.
Can I help him, please? Someone help him. Oh my God.
Our roads converge again.
Like, y'all don't hear him or see this big guy just choking out your boy? Damn. This shit free channel points. Y'all do realize y'all dumping, oh my God, there's 1.4 million on no. If it happens, you guys are gonna go so broke. You guys are gonna lose so much channel points. Oh, this would be probably the biggest upset.
Welcome to the Xbox Game Showcase. For the past
Hella
25
switched
years,
it up. They're doing the
Xbox has
E-Day
delivered
first.
some of the greatest games
They're
of all
doing
time.
the Gears of War
Games
E-Day
that
first.
changed
They
what was
baited us.
possible. Games that brought players together and games that define generations.
Okay.
Xbox was built on the spirit of creativity and heart. And as we kick off the show
Finally.
with Gears of War
That's
E-Day,
7
it's
minutes,
only
by the
fitting
way.
that as we return to Xbox, we return to Gears. So today,
7
we're
minutes, by the
announcing
way.
that Gears of War E-Day will be an Xbox console exclusive.
Oh, that's not good.
The core of Xbox is great games, and that's what today is
not
all
good.
about. We're going to
That's
show you more than 25 titles from creators around the world, followed by our Gears Direct. Enjoy the show.
Buy no Xbox to play Gears. I like Gears, but I'm not buying an Xbox for that. Yo, oh my God, if Persona 6. No. Let's not think about that.
Do I remember the moment my powers came in?
No, that's not
Well,
happening.
I was being crushed to death with seawater,
That's not happening.
mud,
That's not happening.
manure,
That's not happening.
whilst holding onto my sister's hand.
That's not happening.
I remember her fingers gripped so tightly in mine that her nails drew blood.
No, exclusive means it's not coming to Game Pass.
Until
It's only gonna be on Xbox.
I lost her
Yeah, they
grip.
fumbled doing that.
But she stayed away.
It won't come to Game Pass until like a year. Yeah, when they say exclusive, like Fable is not gonna be on Game Pass.
Does stick in the memory bit, yeah.
How do you not have an Xbox all these years? Why would I have an Xbox? Now tell me, why would I have an Xbox or need an Xbox when every single game...
About them.
Bro said Destiny 3, that's not real. Every single game
Real heroes.
I can get on PC or on PS5.
All that power. How do they use it?
Because why on earth would anyone own an Xbox right now? Unless they already had one.
Fighting petty villains. None of that matters.
Shit that they lost the console war.
A real hero.
What is this game? This is not
knows how
Fable.
to wield power. Don't waste time and trivia.
Could be actually.
You're back. And dressed like a twat.
Oh wait, it might actually be Fable.
worry about the vegetables.
A hero knows how to live with their choices.
But we don't see the girl.
What the fuck was that?
I don't think it's Fable because the girl's not here.
Just sent my brother
The
into the
protagonist.
fucking abyss without even asking permission.
Remorse.
Expedition 22
Remorse
is
for the
crazy.
guilty. Look, I will tell you what I told them.
Unless they changed the girl's model.
Albion is
Or,
broken.
oh shit, this is
and we've
Fable.
come to mend it.
She said Albion. This is Fable.
Albion doesn't need heroes.
They got delayed,
It needs a hero.
but do we get a release date, please?
And that hero
Wait, so did they change that girl's model? I know this isn't her, but the other girl in previous trailers. Am I playing Fable? Hell yeah.
is me.
Oh. Oh, okay. It's gonna be exclusive. Oh god, bro. Please no. I love Fable, but exclusive is crazy. What? How is he? How is he alive? What? What? Okay, what? What? He's the villain of fucking Fables and Lost Chapters. He's the main villain.
Halo.
How is he alive? Why am I looking at Halo?
Stuff of legends.
Nah, that guy's a fucking dickhead, bro.
But that's not
That
the
guy is
story I'm telling
alive?
today. This one you haven't heard.
Wait, what is this?
Simple enough.
A new
Drop
Halo?
in, grab the goods, get out before anyone noticed.
It didn't
Well,
say
guess
exclusive, so
what?
thank goodness.
They noticed.
That guy is alive. Wow. It's Jack of Blades, yeah. He's the main villain of Fable Lost
Now
Chapters.
you ready to get to it? You
Fable
served
1,
long
whatever you want to call
enough.
it.
You learn to read.
Son.
This place, more of a
Yo,
freak
we only
show.
care about Persona. Move along, Master Chief.
trust
That's
me,
crazy.
I
Master Chief's
know
not even
freak.
here.
Have you enjoyed your stay so far, Demon?
Sorry to interrupt, but we're on the clock. The thing with simple jobs is
Dang.
they always
thing.
get complicated.
They be run like the thing too, dang.
Plans change.
The body cam's off.
Odds get worse. My advice, bring a Spartan.
I can't believe they brought back Jack of Blades. Oh my god. That motherfucker is back? Jesus Christ. February 23. That's not bad.
Chief, you ever get tired of being the strong, almost silent type?
Almost silent.
No.
No. Campaign mode, okay.
There's something on this island. It's like it calls to me.
Ew, what is that?
You and my father found that island thanks to me.
There's more to this than you understand. More than you can handle.
Oh my god, damn.
Have you really?
A sword keeps you
Good.
alive. A dagger wins the fight. Look at this place. It's mad.
What is this? Oh.
The final confrontation is about to begin.
There's more oomph.
Where are the others? This was
You can
dead.
tell it's not finished. I don't have enough oomph to it.
They're all dead. Move.
UK fighting style. Oh wow.
But you couldn't have said, "Hey, Lenny." You know those
They don't look as
ancient
fluid.
death curse rumors? Well,
The game looks good. It just doesn't. The animation was a little stiff when she was killing. The physics? Yeah, it's like the physics or something. It looked kind of stiff. August 27? Huh, looks so weird. Britain Bank. Alright, what we got next?
You ever heard of the Midnight Channel?
Domino might have been on that Midnight Channel before she died too.
Oh my god, it looks so good. Wow! It looks so good. Oh my god. The new OST though.
We're getting to the bottom of it.
To wield a persona is to wield direct control of one's heart. And the heart.
It looks
is
just like
strengthened
Reload.
through bonds.
Oh, the new UI.
Someone had to see that. I'm glad it was you.
Oh, these new voice actors.
That's supposed to be him.
Good times never seem to last long, do they?
I hate you, sneaky, stupid bully.
Marie is here?
I can't wait.
So, shall we?
Really? So neat.
Come on.
I didn't think they were gonna put Marie in this game. Wow.
All shadows were originally
She's still
born
here.
from humans. Well, then that means Senpai got killed by her other self.
No, get out of here.
Oh my
Don't
god,
look
the
at
game
me.
looks so damn
You're just gonna
good.
stuff me back in your head and pretend I'm not Rhea.
I wonder who the new voice actors are. Damn.
All right. Which means that
Baton
we also gotta
pass?
catch whoever's tossing people in here.
I think I'd like to help too. I'm not running away from this. Well, but I have no problem.
Series
taking down
finale?
shadows.
Oh
So,
shit!
I'll be counting on
It's
you.
called a series finale.
Let's
Oh
team up and catch
shit!
this jerk.
Let's end it. Here.
It's called a series finale. That's so sick. There's a date! Oh my god! Oh my god, we got a date! Let's go. We got a release date. Oh my god, let's go. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Oh, I need to rewatch that trailer at the end of this. Let's fucking go. That's so sick. That's so fucking sick, bro. Oh man, I'm so happy. That shit looks so good. That shit looks so good too. It looks so fucking good. What is this? Shit, I want to rewatch that trailer, bro. Fuck. That shit looks so good.
About what ended the world.
I'm so happy. That was so good. State of Decay, down like something.
A weapon. A virus.
Shit, I'm about to rewatch that trailer on the monitor. That shit was hard. That shit was hard. Where's Black Star?
Places the world forgot.
Everyone was making fun of Persona 4, saying, "Oh, this, oh, what was that teaser we got? This shit gonna look like ass." That shit look amazing, bro. Oh,
We survivors found each other.
built walls, pushed back against the night.
That shit looks so
we'll
good.
Always have each other's back. Because the world has become
It looks
more
so
dangerous
fucking
than
good,
ever.
bro. A man could cry, bro. You ever play Metaphor? Yes, we did a whole playthrough playing Metaphor. What do you mean? It's all on YouTube, bro. Did you watch my Metaphor playthrough? That's what I should be asking you. Funny one. Holy shit, that looked good.
In the end, it doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is that when the dead
They need to upload that trailer ASAP.
So do we.
A fucking sap, bro. I was gonna watch the trailer. Nah, I'm not gonna do it yet. We can save it for then. That shit was godlike, bro. Damn, bro. They already uploaded it? Xbox channel? Bet. I'm gonna need to look at that frame by frame. Damn, it looks so good, bro. I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking at it. Oh, it's State of Decay. Oh, okay. Shit, I got what I wanted. And we got a release date too, bro. That's fucking banger. Xbox Game Studios presents.
On the Sea of Thieves, there have been plenty of grand adventures. But what if you could make your own Sea of Thieves experience? With our new free update, Custom Seas, you can. Let me explain. You could create new ways
At least it's free, I suppose.
Like Rowboat Royale, where small but bloodthirsty crews duke it out in a furious battle to the death. Just remember to watch out for explosive barrels. Oh, I'm sure they're fine. Or skeleton snipe hunt,
rather dig
where
in
the
my butt.
sharpest
What?
shooter with the highest score
What type of message is that?
Or maybe you just want to spawn this.
Why would you type that?
These and one of those, and absolutely loads of these, and well, you get the idea. You could create a cinematic masterpiece. With enhanced camera tools, you could show romance, action, or tragedy. Or maybe just show the world from a whole new perspective. Or you could even just create a place to hang. Literally, if you want. Or you could come together for a party. Or maybe you want somewhere you can just kick back and relax. Whatever your piratical pursuits may be, we're giving you your own keys to the seas. There's a whole new world of possibility ready to explore.
What did you just do? What do you mean, what did I just do? What did you just type in my damn chat?
The tools are now in your hands. What you do with them is up to you.
No ads.
Just try not to wreck the place.
Unlucky timing. Free update. That's free, can't complain. Made in Ukraine. About worldwide best-selling Metro book trilogy.
There is a liar in these tunnels.
Oh shit, what is this?
They call him Führer. But that is not your name.
Whoa.
Your name is Hunter. As a Spartan, you were a legend.
Spartan?
You stood for something. But where are the Spartans now? To protect the Metro from you. You promised a brighter future for our people. Now, the Norai spreads tyranny in your name.
New Metro? Is that what it is? Never played it.
You swore to crush the enemy, to face them head on, and guide the Metro to the light.
That shit look crazy though.
Darkness consumes you. Spreads.
What are you shooting at?
Like a plague. It's you.
I did not see an enemy, but all right.
Within. Every step.
Who is he shooting at?
Every move.
I ain't see nothing. It was too dark. Oh, damn. What is that?
Your lies. And now, Hunter.
My rank team.
It's that legendary Spartan.
Dude, these things are tanky.
Turn to ash. I won't stop. Until the Führer burns with him.
Metro 2039? What the hell? It's a pretty sick trailer. Oh shit, that box are hard. Damn. The headshot with the that shit is hard. The artwork is sick.
World premiere.
Oh, world premiere? Uh-oh. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. I'm sorry. That just threw me off completely. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. That threw me off completely. You know, just I'm gonna excuse myself. Shit like that reminds me of like at the Game Awards or something when like Jeff Keighley will hype up like the next game saying this is like the craziest shit ever. It is an honor to have this at my presentation, and then you just see some fucking random ass like Looney Tunes ass like Wow Wow Wubsy or some shit. It's like
world premiere.
It's like some Jeff Keighley classic bullshit. I just didn't expect that. That just threw me off completely. Oh, what is this? What the fuck is this? Koei Tecmo?
Countless wars have been waged throughout history in pursuit of the elixir
What is
of
this?
immortality. A champion
Ninja?
rises, destined to quell chaos.
Koei Tecmo's everywhere, damn. Like a million of these games, by the way. Was it Souls like as well?
Awaken. Phoenix.
All these games look the same. Oh shit. That Joshua? Go along too? This is a sequel, they get a pass. More Chinese soul slap?
It was you who set the red cliffs ablaze.
They get a pass, bro. Whoa, who? No. It's a sequel, they get a pass. We don't need no more of those though.
For the challenge and the reward of opening your very
Who
own
the fuck?
Nothing can beat us, nothing can break us, nothing can shock us, nothing can shake us. I know it's nothing.
You'll be going to beautiful Bedford County, USA.
Cult Simulator.
Teaming with
Why is it
locals
white?
waiting to join our family.
Oh.
You scare me? You don't scare me.
You better reevaluate your life choices.
You pissed off a
I saw
random
white cloaks,
person
I
on
got.
the street. You want a trophy?
Even if they don't know him yet.
They knew not to make them wearing white.
And I will shield you from the apocalypse. Join us.
Nothing can stop our love.
Looking for the owner of a severed human head. Come and collect it, or it will be given away on a first-come, first-served basis.
They getting a little close there. Getting a little close there. They're getting a little close.
World premiere.
World premiere. That was us. What the fuck is she doing? She bathing in gold?
Left your people.
Bathing in liquid gold?
Believing time would see them heal. But what is left in the dark sickens.
The fuck?
And some binds cannot be broken.
Whoa. Oh. What the fuck? Hold on. That isn't in him. That missed. Whatever, bro. Whatever. That wasn't in his neck. That wasn't in his neck. What? Okay, I mean, I guess. That literally missed, sorry. But this shit better be good. Okay, it is. I'm about to say, bro.
Paradise. Meet the locals. Learn to
This Fallout. That's not rap.
Sound nice. What a hoot! You found loot.
Could be worse. It could have been Ubisoft.
Hoard. Share your stroke of luck with your pals. All aboard. Build your camp as a team. Hey, life's pretty swell, but in this Appalachian wonderland, all is not well. Gadzooks! It's worse than expected.
What, bro? Just so gameplay already.
In places undetected. So
they
suit
do every
up,
time.
son, and defend our great nation. And gather all your friends when you fight this infestation. That's the play, Daddy-O. We'll tackle them all. Rebuilding our bright future from the ashes, rising tall. When you hear adventure calling, when you're looking for kicks. Answer the call of Vault. Answer the call of Vault. Answer the call of Vault.
Anything but gameplay, bro.
Oh, dear.
3 daily rewards. Free trial. Oh my god, finally gameplay. Infestations available now. Oh my god, Bethesda again.
Our flock has been led astray by your
Who's Doom?
defiance. Argent and Nord trembles in the wake of your actions.
They cooking up.
You now.
Damn.
The council has chosen beneath this chamber.
This shouldn't exist unless it's DLC. You better cop up that $70. Get ready to cough up that 70.
Is your pain-given shame. It holds many secrets. Only a cleansed soul may leave.
Whoa.
I am not your enemy. I am your way out.
Music is fucking crazy. That shit gets you pumped. Oh, you can fight a fucking god.
With the Slayer gone, have you
Gym
not
music.
found peace? The demons, they have retreated.
I can take on anything.
Their war is with him.
Damn. Oh my, he's swinging on him. Should look fun. Yeah, this is a new game. This is for sure a new game.
The Slayer is alive, and we're going to fight.
I don't think it's a DLC. Is it? The Dark Ages? Revelations? It is DLC? July 7th? Oh, that's pretty soon. It should might be $60 DLC. What's this? The hell am I looking at? Sick. That's a fun ass game. Dog, you can't just show that. Oh my god, the PTSD. Yeah, well, y'all trying to know about this? Oh my god, original Xbox? What are they doing? What is this? 25th anniversary edition. Oh, that's sick. It looks like the controller. Oh, they even have a controller version of the old controller. Oh my god. That's pretty sick. That's pretty sick. Game Studios presents.
In the frozen north.
What the hell is this? Age of Empires? Oh boy.
We know the thunderous crash of the waves against our ships.
Oh boy.
We know the bite of cold steel. The roar of fires.
I gotta file my nails.
Our enemies. And that the moment of peace is only temporary.
Because Valhalla opens its gates only to the worthy. And the next proving ground awaits just beyond the horizon.
Sunflower. Onion ring. No, Onion ring's hilarious. Sunflower's a good one though. Mojang? Minecraft? Was it their story mode? Oh shit, I actually have to do that Minecraft sponsor. Nice bonnet. Dude. Son. What are you doing awake, feisty? Oh wait, it's not nighttime. Fuck. I'm so used to it being like 12 o'clock and you being here. You getting on this? I actually have a Minecraft sponsor I have to do actually. I don't know what this is though. Sunny with a chance of meatballs. Dude, I need to rebuy Minecraft though, sadly. Pretty sure I lost my Minecraft account. Oh, what the fuck? This is not normal Minecraft. Oh, what is this? That wasn't 30 FPS, but alright. What is this? It's like a dungeon Minecraft game. It's Dungeons too? Oh, Minecraft Dungeons the game already? I didn't know Minecraft Dungeons was a game. Four players. That's cool. There's some resources to slot. I might just explore showcases. Yeah, it's not stuff you'd be interested in, that's for sure. Unless you like Persona. We're not getting DMC6. Oh, Fable. Fable was cool. And Gears. I don't know if you...
World premiere.
Okay, here we go. What was another world premiere?
Ladies and gentlemen, admirers of the mysteries of
The hell's
magic.
this?
Take your seats before the lights go down and the curtain rises, for our next act is about to begin.
Blood... What are you
Are you
saying?
sitting comfortably? Are you prepared to witness feats both mystifying and illuminating?
Harry Potter, what the no?
Watch closely then, and let the shadows tell their story.
Hogwarts Legacy 2? I actually like Hogwarts Legacy. The game was fun.
Behold, the famous
It's a shame
Jacob
that
Ventura,
the writer of Harry
stage
Potter
magician
is what she is, though. But whatever.
So brilliant were his tricks. It cast 5 long shadows.
You can't say it.
They called themselves masters. Through
We
a
can't.
deal
I
with the
do not
devil,
support that.
The masters
Not at all. But
more power.
I have to give credit. The
Their
game was
deal
fun.
demanded a sacrifice.
The ending was kind of lackluster, I must say. The ending was kind of mid.
Jacob was trapped in eternal torment, but the devil had other plans. He pulled
Dishonored?
Jacob from his
Dishonored is fun as
infernal
hell.
nightmare and offered a new deal. Face their legions, their tricks,
Ido?
every
What?
abomination they command.
Why you say Ido?
Take what should have been
I am
his.
so old when you voted.
Escape.
I am so old when you were voting for DMC. I thought you were running DMC as a musical guest. Bro. no, it's on the game. You're good. Don't worry. You're good. This realistic Cuphead? Oh god, don't bring up Cuphead. Not Cuphead. Anything but Cuphead. Don't bring that up. You on Twitch right now? Yeah. How many people are watching? Hey, it's balanced. It's 250, 240. It's somewhat balanced, no? What the hell is that? Whoa, this game is trippy. Magic stuff. You can't just call everything slop feisty. the hell was that? Magician, the Devil's Deal. That actually looked pretty cool.
A deal's a deal, Jacob. I'll see you soon.
I'm not paying $70 though, but it was like $10 shirt. It won't be. Pick a card. Pick a slop. Any slop. Any cards. What the hell is this?
What would you give for victory?
Yo, I wonder if we're gonna see like Liza P 2 here or something. Or Liza P DLC. More DLC.
Your sons?
Fucking Liza P, bro. I need to beat that DLC. Oh my god. What am I looking at?
Between victory and defeat is thin.
Oh shit. What are y'all doing?
What if you had within you power, terrible and divine, to destroy your
253, 253. You guys are trying to balance the numbers?
Would you have the strength?
What the hell is that? This literally looks like a Liza P boss. Oh, it's a first person. What the fuck? Is it a VR game or what?
There, within reach. Could you sacrifice everything?
Whoa. Oh, damn. Okay, that's how you moving?
For your country.
Did he just pull out a great sword? Oh, wow. It's like it's a Souls game in first person.
For your emperor.
I don't know what was happening, but all right. Vincent Castle. Am I supposed to know who that is? Oh shit, that artwork is sick though. The artwork is sick. British Bioshock. Damn, Bethesda again? Damn.
Glenumbra's full of thieves.
I'm getting Xbox and Bethesda in bed together. I'd be forgetting.
Don't take this the wrong way.
Okay, this is
I've been
Elder Scrolls.
watching you. You've got talent and a lot of promise.
Stop! Thief!
This is Elder Scrolls Online, if I had to guess. At least it looks like it.
Are you ready to talk about planning a real heist, partner?
Yo, Nikki, thanks for the follow. The Thieves Guild is back.
Welcome to our Thieves Guild. Our members will show you the ropes. This job is
The
going to
graphics have
need
improved a
every
lot since
trick
I
in
last
the
seen
book.
Elder Scrolls.
I heard that caravan
For
should
Blade.
arrive tomorrow.
Minecraft Builder Cape? What
Some
the?
jobs call for slick distractions and quick fingers, but you never truly know what's
Persona
behind
really
the
only good.
door.
I mean, I
Or
got
if
what I
that's not
wanted. I
quite
got
your
my
style,
Persona and I got
step
a
into
release
the
date.
shadows and take a direct
That's
approach.
fucking insane to me. I didn't think it was gonna get a release date. I thought I was gonna get like a late 2027 or something.
There's other treasure all around the world, if you know where to look and are willing to fight for it.
Whoa.
Whether it's fortune, adventure, or danger, the Thieves Guild has everything you need, as long as you're willing to take it.
Don't mind if I do. Hands off the cheese. I got here first.
The cheese. Hands off the cheese, he says.
Oh.
Get your hands off his cheese. Y'all heard the man. Hands off his cheese. I wonder what game they're gonna end with. I'm very curious. Not like it's about to be over, but I'm just saying. Very curious. Beauty of the United States, or it was like some fucking air pilot game. Some shit. Is it a flight simulator or what is it? I mean, US slot. Oh yeah. It's flight simulator. Skip? He says skip, it's a live stream. They got guns? No, it's flight simulator. What are you gonna shoot at? They want you to just fly. I love America. We love our country. 2 times speeded. I fucking 3 times speeded it. Yeah, we're already caught up. You're gonna hold this shit, bro. I don't know what to tell you guys. We're already caught up. You gonna love this USA. You gonna love this country. You gonna love this country. They got the Mount Rushmore. Oh my god. Go ahead, chat USA in chat. Flight Simulator 2024. Answer the call today. World Update 22. Answer the call. What's this? This racing now? How much is this game? I'm looking it up. There's no way this isn't like lower than like $20.
The mountain stands here, yet it cannot be seen.
It's 60. No.
It passes without a sound.
It's $70. It's on sale right now for $50. What? How much we were playing this? Oh my god, what?
Move in secrecy. Renowned for their mastery.
Yeah, I don't understand, I guess. I don't know. I don't know ball. I don't know ball, I guess. I don't know ball, I guess. I can boot up a GTA and go fly around all I want. I don't understand ball clearly.
All is obscure.
I don't
just begun.
What is this? Is it another Chinese Souls game? Please. No, please. You guys have done a million of these.
The human heart. This is your game to decide.
Oh my god, I think it is. I think it is. So many of these. Oh, this is MMO. I'll give it a pass. This is where winds meet. Oh, it is. Okay, it's where winds meet. Nah, it gets a pass. A pass since it's MMO.
Dracula's castle is just
oh
ahead.
shit, they're updating, they're showing more footage of the Castlevania game.
I have come here to destroy you.
I forgot about this.
Just
The
like
fucking
my
soundtrack
father,
on this game is sick.
Mother and their allies before me.
The soundtrack on this game is fucking sick.
No one.
But the last show they showed, that shit was crazy.
Mr. Belmont would be a girl.
The hell, there's cards? What is that?
God has given you another chance, Rose.
Whoa.
You must use it wisely to better control your curse and strengthen yourself.
Have more magic in my blood now. I need to finish the Castlevania Netflix. I got to season 2, I think, and I stopped.
You are no more than an irritating thing. What makes you think you can stop me this time?
This shit probably gets crazy after that.
I've always wanted a pet.
Nocturne? No, I don't watch Nocturne. That's one that I did.
Stupid girl.
I completely forgot about this game. Holy shit.
I am Rose Belmont, and I will hunt the night.
She's a Belmont? October? Oh shit. Damn. Ooh, look at that artwork. Belmont's Curse.
Some years have a color to them.
Jesus. Am I gonna play it? I might.
A haze that seems to fill the whole world. In its glow, you discover
I was
wonderful
watching
new
Nintendo.
places.
The art style was sick though, I can't lie. You'd have thought I was watching a Nintendo Direct.
Dear
Though.
friends you always needed.
It's like a Toby Fox game.
And golden moments which linger on the warm breeze.
Yo, can I see that new Blade game, please? So is this gonna turn dark? Wait, why is that girl's face crossed out? Wait. No, this is not what you think it is.
As dreams.
Huh. No, I don't think that's what you think it is. That's not what you think it is. It's one of those, bro. It's not what you think it is, bro. I saw the red flags, bro.
World premiere.
That shit is a horror game. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way. Yo, the suspense is killing me, bro. It's green. It's green. Finally! Finally! Oh my god! I actually lived to see Persona 6 get announced. I actually lived to see Persona 6 get announced. Oh my god. Oh god. Ew. Please don't be Call of Duty. Okay, it's not. I actually lived to see Persona 6 get announced. Wait, they didn't end with it too. What are they ending with then? Oh my god, Persona 6 finally got announced, bro. Holy shit. Holy shit, bro. Oh my god, bro. What the spiral? What? Okay, they're saving the bangers for last. They're saving the bangers for last. What the fuck is happening? Wow. Spyro is back. What the fuck? What is happening? What is this?
It's my kind of night. Alarms are ringing. Bullets
What
are
are they?
flying.
What game are they gonna end with then?
What you do that for?
I'm so confused.
And every copper in the tangle is on my tail.
If you are you guys didn't end with Persona 6, it has to be something crazy then. What? It would have to be an insane ending then. What? If we're not ending with Persona 6, what are we ending with?
Schemes have schemes. Me, I prefer to make it up as I go.
What are we ending with? I'm so curious.
Oh,
you'll have better odds getting through.
Do you know how long we've been waiting for Persona 6?
You're easy pickings for someone
And they didn't
with any
end with that.
sand.
I keep saying it, I know,
Regards
but like,
to the sun, man.
that's how serious this shit is. What is this game, by the way?
Cheap rubbish.
What the fuck? Oh
Corpse in
my.
hand is worth two in the grave, as they say.
Look at the bloody airships. We're not here for you.
Not here for me. I'm Anne fucking Darrow.
Time to lay our hands to mischief.
We've been preparing to rob Griswick's vault for months.
I'm so shocked. I can't believe Persona 6 just got announced.
Get to that crane to lower the ship.
Wow, that's fucking ridiculous.
Greetings. I am the Miracle Industries auto-loading crane. If you have the authority, I am at your service.
What happens if I fired a few holes in you?
The lift is now unlocked.
Bro, what? What? W fucking Xbox. It's a shame that all this Persona stuff got leaked though, so we kind of anticipated this. But like, W fucking Xbox.
Just to go quietly.
Well, I certainly don't expect any trouble from some of Avalon's most disposable citizens.
Yeah, it's been so long that like, I mean, that's low-key their fault for taking that long to announce this shit. Except for last night. Last night, the Atlas, what was it? Website, they mistakenly updated and leaked the Persona 4 artwork.
This place,
But that's
on this
4, not
day,
6.
is ripe for changing the course of history.
But I mean, there were still Persona
It's
6
like
leaks,
one
of course,
for easy choices.
from the other day.
But I just
for a
found
week.
a way to control the past. Change who's in control. Make things unfair in our favor. Brought you a little toy with a big mouth.
What a proper little
What is this trailer, yo?
You'll ever be. You
They gonna end with Universe 3? I don't know. I don't think they're gonna show Xenoverse 3. Or I mean, it's at Summer Games Fest, so I guess they could. But from what I heard, they weren't allowed to show any footage or record. F Koki, thanks for the Prime. Appreciate it.
Folk like us, especially not the future.
Yo, if they end with COD, that's so. Oh my God. Okay, I guess they would do that, huh?
Have a chance to steal it.
I guess they would do that. They bought Call of Duty, right? They spent so much money on it. Yeah, isn't COD already revealed though? They did that last time. No, they ended with COD. Remember that like futuristic, well not futuristic, that weird trailer? And we were like, what the fuck is this game? And it ended up being COD. With that guy. That's what they ended with last time. Well, don't end with COD, that's so basic. That was exclusive. We see the Blade game.
Clockwork Revolution is an original experience
Oh my God, they're not
full of
done.
intriguing characters and
I'm
incredible
talking about
world
this thing.
building.
Oh my God.
And it's an Xbox console exclusive coming in 2027.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a milestone year for us as we celebrate 25 years with you, and we're excited about our lineup of iconic games. Record-breaking
Oh, we're
Forza
done?
Horizon 6, the return of Master Chief.
I think they're gonna
rebuilt
say
from
we
the
got one more
ground up,
game.
The
At least
extraordinary
I think I
world
remember
of
them doing
Fable,
that last
full
time.
of choice and consequences.
It's gonna be like our next game is our last
Incredible
game.
games
Something,
from our
something. Thank you for
partners
watching.
at Sega, 4A
And stay
Games,
tuned for the
Koei Tecmo,
E-Day
and more. And
thingy.
players can look forward to 2 upcoming exclusives, Gears of War E-Day in 2026 and Clockwork Revolution in 2027. In a moment, we'll dive into Gears of War E-Day.
Oh, we're
But
done.
Before we do, one franchise that has been with us from the beginning
Oh my God.
is Call of Duty. Now, it's bigger than ever, with a new Modern Warfare later this year and a movie on the way. Last month, our teams at Infinity Ward
bro.
and Activision gave us a
Oh
glimpse
my
of
God,
the
we
story and
predicted it
gameplay.
right on the fucking
Today,
nail, bro.
we're back with a first look at DMZ, reimagined in a way that only Call of Duty can deliver.
God, bro. Okay, bro. Just put the Call of Duty in the bag. Like, I like COD, but I'm annoyed at this shit, bro. And I play COD almost every year. God damn, dude. Like, and with a banger, bro. Call of Duty, that's so basic. This shit better like knock my socks off, bro. Like, what? What the fuck? What the fuck? Why are we Korean? Korean COD is insane. This is random. What is that? They ran out of ideas. Why the fuck? Bro. I mean, I guess they can't do Russia for the millionth time or some shit, so. They can't do Russia or fucking America for the millionth time, so go Korea now? I don't know. Player voice chat added. Oh my god, do they have like a art graders mode or some shit?
See if there's any weapons or gear laying around.
It's called DMZ, whatever this thing is. The enemy in this COD is North Korea. Oh wow. It's the extraction mode. Yeah, figured. That's what I said. Voice chat enabled. Oh shit, you got.
Damn, he's down. Let's go help him.
Hell no. That's on him.
Hell nah.
His ass up here.
Copy. Where are we at on the intel? Got it.
What type of teammate is this guy? He said, hell no, that's on him.
On you.
He said, hell no, that's on him.
Shit.
You know we're here.
Fucking Cold Reese 00. His username.
Damn.
Let's just find that HVT. Hey, hold on.
What's up?
Oh, you guys are dead. What are you?
Hey, you good, man?
Nah, bro. These guys suck. These guys are be terrible art graders players, bro. Holy shit. What are you aiming at? He just died to fall. Oh, I was about to dead. I was about to say. Oh shit, that guy got smoked. There's no robots? No shredder? Fucking shredder was broken. Where's the shredder at? What's that map with the shredder on it? That map was crazy. Yo, your boy got laid out. You're thirsting him too? Damn.
I got you, man. You good?
You can drag in this game? You can revive and drag people? Prime Stella Montis.
Oh, hell yeah.
That shit was crazy, bro. Yeah, he wasted like the whole bag on one guy. He thirsted him on the ground, too.
Yeah, I got it.
Is it the evac?
Oh, shit.
Oh, how did you survive that? What? That guy didn't headshot you? Oh my god, this guy's so aggressive. Or a grenade or something. You know, you hear him up there. You about to walk into a claymore or some shit. What? Nah, this guy.
Copy.
Cold Reese should be dead by now, by the way. I don't know how he's alive. Exfil time, 4 minutes, 23 seconds. Oh, he's looting his body. What is this game? I don't know, bro. Call of Duty's
downstairs.
They're trying to like have an art graders type of game mode or something. Did you leave your boy? You deserve to die if you leave your boy. Oh yeah, he dead. It'd be funny if your boy leave you though. Oh, you guys are dead. Oh, okay, so this is actual gameplay. I don't know how that motherfucker's alive. He must have some crazy ass body armor because he should have died like 10 million times over. They saw arc raiders pop off like that. They want that too. It's like Fortnite or Warzone. If anything shooter pops off, Call of Duty will be taking it. DMZ multiplayer. Wait, where's Warzone? Wait, what? There's no Warzone anymore? There's no way there's no Warzone anymore. Oh, hell no. I'm good off that. All right. That was a interesting showcase. I don't think it was as good as the PlayStation showcase, and I don't think it was as good as Summer Games Fest. But it is what it is. No DMC. I am paying out. You guys said there would be DMC. There was no DMC. 2.2 million channel points. Jesus Christ, you guys just lost an A. Damn. Pull up Persona trailer again? Yes, I will. So what happened here? Let's see. So Summer Games Fest is now over. So what happened? GTA was not here. Infamous wasn't here. Persona was here. Nobody had any gacha games or new gacha games to show. That's insane. DMC wasn't here. Intergalactic was not here. Zonkoi wasn't here. FF17 wasn't here. Cyclops wasn't here, but we're gonna see him in like literally tomorrow or day after. Persona 6 was here. Wow. Crazy Taxi was here. Blade game was not here. DOA was not here. Mega Man wasn't here. And the Chicken Souls-like game was not here. And Kingdom Hearts, well, hey, they're really surprised at that point. Unfortunate. All right, let's pull up the Persona trailer. Yes, I was looking at my other monitor. I was not joking when I said that. Let's look at this trailer, and damn, I actually got up for this just for Persona. It was worth it. Oh, Spyro was cool too. Oh my god, Persona 6 actually got fucking announced. I can't fucking believe it. I'm on the wrong YouTube channels. Make me out. Persona 6 actually fucking got announced. They didn't show Adachi in the trailer, did they? Let's look at Persona 4 first. Oh my god, that's actually insane. Hoo-wee.
You ever heard of the Midnight Channel?
Domino might have been on that Midnight Channel before she died too.
Oh, Adachi is in here. The Midnight Channel. New voice actors too.
Now, where are we?
Whoa.
Feels like we're someplace totally different. Look out!
She is voice actor still sounds like GA.
We're getting to the bottom of it.
To wield a persona is to wield direct control of one's heart.
That's
the
hard.
heart is strengthened through bonds.
Doesn't it sound cool?
Damn, it looks
Someone had to
so
see that.
fucking good.
That's supposed to be him.
Good times never seem to last long.
Oh
do
my
they?
god.
Hey, you sneaky, stupid bully jerk!
Sneaky, stupid bully jerk.
So, shall we? Really?
You're in high school. God
Come
damn.
on, don't call me that. All shadows were originally born from humans. Well, then that means Senpai got killed by her other self.
No! Get out of here! Don't look at me!
Does that mean you're just gonna stuff me back in your head and pretend I'm not Rhea?
I can't.
Jeez, bro. We dating everyone. What the hell? Damn, look at the dungeon.
We also gotta catch whoever's tossing people in here.
I think I'd like to help too.
I'm actually so mad at replay P4.
But I have no problem taking down shadows.
So I'm gonna play this.
So yeah, I'll be counting on you, partner. Then let's team up and catch
The
this
all-out
jerk.
attacks look good as shit too.
Let's end it. Here, go.
They got baton pass in this too. And February 18th. W. Shit, we will be there. Is it up on Steam already? They're not gonna show it, but it should be up on Steam by now. It should be up on Steam. Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oh, the release date's not up here yet, but it is here. What Persona 6? It's probably pushing this. This is a teaser. Yeah, not yet. Too soon. Too soon. Too soon. Yeah, you can pre-order it on Xbox now, probably, but not the other shit. Damn. P5 remake. What the what? I'm sure they will remake P5 eventually. So they cancel Blade. No, the Blade game is not canceled. Damn trolls. All right, let's look at this Persona 6 teaser. This was a teaser of all time. I have to look at this frame by frame, no? God, the suspense is crazy. It's just graves and glitches, yeah. Bro. Yeah, they tickled your balls with this trailer, yeah. Royal's not a remake, it's like an expansion. Kinda. I think it was like a director's cut. I don't fucking know. What is happening? What is that? The fuck? Bro, that doesn't tell us shit. Darker vibes, SMT, yeah, it definitely seems to be darker. It would be interesting if it was like instead of being a high school, it'd be college or something. That'd be sick. Definitely feels like it's a darker themed game. I mean, look at the fucking first teaser. Because what in the hell is happening? What am I looking at? You can't even get anything. Who the hell is that? I'm doing it frame by frame. It feels like SMT. What in the hell? What are we cooking? Oh my god. Son. It says, who are you in the teaser, does it? Oh, it does. It's W H O. Is it finger? I feel like I've seen that from Metaphor. Who we pointing at? Who we pointing at? A-R-E. Definitely says, who are you then? What in the hell? I like the darker route that it seems they're going in. Why? Yeah. Oh my god. Oh. It's a butterfly. What the fuck is happening in this trailer? Crazy no DMC, son. It's a sideways U? Sounds like a C. That's a sideways U. Jeez, bro. They are teasing. Yeah, I mean, there's not much we can really get out of that, but holy shit. Holy shit. I'm so happy Persona 4 got announced. I'm gonna watch the show one more time. There's not much we can get from the Persona 6. This is a teaser, but this is cinema.
You ever heard?
I can't wait to play this.
Domino might have been on that Midnight Channel before she died too.
Damn, it looks so good. A long way from Persona 4 Golden, that's for damn sure. Oh my god.
Now where are we?
Oh, I was kind of worried thinking that maybe Persona 4 Golden is still gonna be better than this, but no way.
Now then, whatever's going on
Let's
here,
give it like fumble this.
we're getting to the bottom of it.
To wield a persona is to wield direct control of one's heart.
And the heart is strengthened through bonds.
Bonds.
Doesn't it sound cool?
Someone had to see that. I'm glad it was you.
Was that supposed to be him?
Good times never seem to last long, do they?
I hate you.
I don't mind the voice actors. They sound pretty good. They all sound.
Can't wait.
So,
They all
shall we?
sound pretty similar to the old ones.
Come on, don't call me that.
All
They
shadows
sound
were
similar. They're not the same
originally
voice
born
actors,
from
but they sound very similar.
And that
Like I heard
means
Chie,
Senpai
I
got
can
killed
instantly
by her
recognize her.
herself.
No! Get out of here! Don't look at me!
Does that mean you're just gonna stuff me back in your head and pretend I'm not Rhea?
I can't!
God damn, it looks so good. Zio.
Alright.
Baton
Which means that we
pass.
also gotta catch whoever's tossing people in here.
Yukiko's castle.
I think I'd like to help
Yosuke
too.
don't sound right?
I'm not
Sounds
running
fine to
away
me.
from this. Well,
Series
I have
finale.
no problem taking down shadows. Damn.
So yeah, I'll be counting on you, partner. And let's team up and catch this jerk.
Let's end it.
The music sounds so good, man.
Persona.
Let's go, bro. W. I wonder if we're gonna get like all the like endings. If we're gonna get like a million fucking endings like the last game. Like Golden. I don't know if we're gonna get like a crazy ass amount of endings. I wonder. We'll see though. We shall see. All right, chat. I'm gonna head out of here. I'm gonna catch you guys in a little bit. We'll be back later today. I'm going to go get a little bit more sleep. I'm still sleepy. So I'm gonna head out. We're gonna be back later today. I don't think we're playing Cuphead today, but we'll see. I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do later, but I'm probably gonna rewatch these trailers later and play some more games. So stick around. I'll catch you guys later. I appreciate you guys all being here, even though it's pretty early. I'm gonna send you guys to. Who can I send you guys to? There's a lot of people live right now. There's a lot of people live. Damn. I'm trying to find someone that's not about to end. Give me a second. Shadowrum, aka 2XKO. Send us to Asian Bunny. Hold on, let me see who's rated me recently. I can send you guys to. I don't know if Cat's about to end, but I can send you guys to Cat. She's rated me recently, or I can send you guys to Shine. Shine is watching Blink Respawn. You guys want Shine or Cat? Which one? Shine or Cat? Cat? Okay. Cat it is. I'll catch you guys later. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you guys for watching. And yeah, we'll be back later with some more. I need sleep. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll catch you guys as well. We'll be back later today with some. I'll be back around like, I don't fucking know, but sometime later tonight. So I'll see you guys. See ya.